Good day and Temple Pona, and welcome back to another stream, and it's the end of the month, and that means I'm gonna be going over some more folk tales, folklore, and other collected stories. This time, it was just recently World Water Day, and I suppose I am a bit late for that, but, well, since that was a thing, was good to be around, that sort of thing, I thought I should do something for World Water Day too. Again, a bit late, but whatever. And, well, what one does one think when one thinks of water? Flood myths, and yes, I know, World Water Day is about fresh water and, like, preserving that, but it's also about the seas, and, well, regardless, I decided that I wanted to do a little bit of not that, a little bit of storytelling about flood myths. I've got a collection, and flood myths are fascinating because of how common they are. And not only are they very, very common, depending on the route, many of them come from, are passed down and mutate and change throughout, as they are passed on from person to person. But many flood myths are also about actual places that actually flooded, and through oral storytelling have been passed down, and there's a record of the fact that there was a flood here, and I think that's fascinating and lovely. And so, the first flood myth I'm gonna go over is from South America. Now, I've covered American flood myth before for the Aztec people. I've mentioned before that, obviously in Aztec culture, the world has ended several times already, and so one of the times the world was destroyed after the sun, that current sun, she was really sad. She got bullied and cried a lot, and then the world ended because she cried enough to make it flood. Anyway, that's a more northern, more central-ish American story. Now, let's go over a southern American myth, and this one is about the emphasis is off on the flood and more on the people involved, because it is a folk hero myth. Now, I'm gonna be using the name Botrica, definitely butchered, but Botrica for the name of the folk hero, though I hear, well, like many folk heroes, there are many names for them. I promise you this image will be relevant in a moment, but Botrica is a Muska, again, apologies for the mispronunciation, Muska folk hero, a apparent messenger of the gods. I'm not hugely familiar with the Muska belief system. I focused on just Botrica, so apologies. But a bearded man, very prominently bearded, sometimes depicted with a green mask and the beard, not as one with feathers. And Botrica was a very wise man. So, the story goes that the people of Muska are settled down and living here, and along comes Botrica, and he teaches these people many important things, from ethics and morals and leadership, management, how to structure a government, and not only did he teach the people these academic high society stuff, he also taught them a lot of practical skills, crafts like metalworking and agriculture to go along with infrastructure, a lot of very important things and very useful things. But the first things I mentioned, ethics and morals, they're the key ones, because it's always very important to live well, and it's also very important to treat others well as well. And so, humility and not being greedy, and what a guy like that would teach. And after he taught the Muska people, he went westward, and then he went to live as an ascetic, because he's a wise old man. He of course is going to practice what he preaches in simplicity and that sort of stuff. Anyway, it was all fine and dandy, but except eventually the people of the Muska people then eventually started to turn away from Botchika's teachings. So, they got hedonistic, greedy, lived in excess and frivolity and, all that sort of stuff. And ultimately turned away from Botchika's teachings and what he said. And then the savannah of Bogota then flooded. This is where they lived. This is very bad, as floods tend to be, and the people turned to Botchika and was like, Botchika, be real great if you could help us. And what do you know? There's a great rainbow across the sky, and across it is standing the Botchika with a staff in her hand, and she goes up to the savannah, and with a single strike cracks the earth, and that creates Tequendama Falls. Now, Tequendama Falls, that's the fall that's depicted in the smoke here. And of course these falls then allow the water from the flood to just drain out, and the Muska people are saved, and then they go back to being humble and not taking in excess. And here we see first of all, let's talk about the story itself. It's very well, first of all, it's a flood myth, and so it has many hallmarks of flood myths. Notably, we have flood as a punishment for being sinful in whatever manner, and you have your saint, your teacher or messenger who comes along and saves the people from the flood, or warns people of the flood, or now it is notable that I believe Spanish, when the Spanish people first arrived, they saw Botchika and thought that Botchika was evidence of Western influence prior to their arrival, because man with a white beard is a classic motif for saints and stuff. But in terms of Botchika's overall depiction, is a lot less fitting and rather incongruous, and obviously there have been studies done. I'm no expert, but basically it boils down to the beard isn't really the same sort of depiction of a beard, particularly, as I said, the feathers and stuff. that's not really something that you find in motifs in bearded men in Europe. Especially from the West, I meant from the East. Like I said, it is also from the West if you go west enough, but you know what I mean, from Europe. There's little influence from Europe, so this folk here was probably, almost definitely, original, or long, standing tradition of the Muska people. And, as I said, motifs of, obviously, punishment, and favorite figures. Now, that's now I will say that there are other myths of people falling to sin, and then a bearded guy who's a messenger from the gods in some capacity, deciding to help them out. And this one is closer to home. It's a Breton myth. Well, it's a Breton story, and as I said, it has a lot of similarities, but it's also got a lot of differences, obviously, to Botka. And this is, well, it's the story of Eve. Now, Eve is a city, or was a city, in the British Channel, or what is now the British Channel. It was ruled over by one King Gradlon, built at the behest of his daughter Dahut. This city was marvellous, plentiful wealth, arts and commerce, successful in every measure of the word, and its palace of marble, cedar and gold, wonderful and magical to behold. And, being at sea, it of course had a great sea gate that allowed ships to go and to arrive when the sea was low. Now this great magnificent sea gate had a single key, a golden key. This was used to open and shut this sea gate. It was the only key that allowed it to be unlocked. Now, Dahut was a wise king, or so they say, yet Dahut was not. She was frivolous and an unrepentant sinner, and what's important is that she had a lover. Now, one night, at the behest of her lover and an awful lot of alcohol, she steals the key from the king, and in her drunken stupor, she mistakes the key not for the gate key, as she was intending to allow her lover into the city, but for the sea gate key. And so she goes to the gate, and it does not unlock. And so she goes to the sea gate thinking, I'm too drunk, I must have mistaken the gate, and unlocks the sea gate, and water comes flooding into the city, killing the people of Eve, all except Dahut and King Gradlon. And Saint Grenon, he arrives to King Gradlon and whispers in his ear and flees him to flee on his horse. And as the King Gradlon and Dahut ride, the sea and the tides rise and catch up to them, until the saint whispers to Gradlon to throw the demon thou carrying into the sea, if does not desire to perish, and the hut falls from the horse and Gladwin is saved. And so is the story of Gladwin and the hut and the city of Ease. Now, this story has a lot of variants, and I could find a lot of them. Now, first of all, let's go in order of what I've written down. First of all, Gladwin, as I said, he was wise and pious in most versions of the myth, but in some versions it is not the hut who is sinful and unrepentant, but Gladwin who unlocks the sea gate in a drunken stupor. And the golden key, which I've depicted, was not always golden, but sometimes silver. Sometimes the hut, or whoever opens the gate, is drunk in a drunken stupor, but sometimes they're just stupid and don't recognise the key. And the saint that warns them is not always Saint Grenon in the tellings. Sometimes it is Saint Corentin. And the hut, sometimes she falls, sometimes she is thrown by her father, and the hut doesn't always permanently die in the story. No, in many tellings, she becomes a Morgan or a mermaid and is still seen to this day, along with the ruins of the city of Ease, where she lures sailors to their death, as mermaids tend to do. Now, as I said, this is a lot closer geographically to me. It is well, if you've grown up with this story being told to you, it's understandable why you might go to, say, what is now modern-day Colombia, and hear their story of Botrica and think, those stories sure sound similar. I wonder if we influenced them. Yes, I am being charitable to the colonizers, because I mean, it's not entirely unreasonable when you have a story about a people, a city, who believe in a messenger from the gods, turn away and become sinful and greedy and hedonistic, and then the sea rises and at least one person is saved by a bearded man. Of course, there are, as I just mentioned and went over, there are many similar themes, that of a flood as a punishment, though in English it's less a punishment, more a stupid mistake. And, as I said, bearded old man saving people is also a common theme. Of course, one thing I didn't mention about Botrica is that it's not only a flood myth, but it's also a myth about how, obviously, the Tequendama Falls came to be. Whereas I do not believe Eve actually ever existed. You'll have to double check me on that one, but I'm fairly certain no one has ever found the city, and I feel like they would. And it's not exactly far. Though, saying that, it's not like there haven't been flooded cities along the coasts of Britain and France, and so there is a chance that one of the city flooded and lost to times, swept away by the currents, was inspiration for Eve. I, however, am not familiar with them, and as such would not be able to tell you whether they are not the legendary, quote-unquote, city. And speaking of flood myths that are true, let's go to Australia. Now, Australia has a great many flood myths, and that's due to an important factor, that being the fact that Australia is rather good at telling stories. Now, there's a practice called the dream time, supposedly started by either wallabies or the rainbow serpent, depending on your tale, but it is a what was I saying? I've completely lost my train of thought. I was talking about Australia and how there are a great many tales of floods in Australia that have a fair chance of being real. And that is because a lot of them, or I won't say all because I don't know all of them, but a lot of them feature real places. And I'll go over why they, or possibly how they were preserved so well earlier, that's what I was talking about. But for now, let's go over just a couple of these tales. Now, let's go to the Naranga people and look to what is modern-day Spencer Gulf, separating the mainland from Rottnest Island. Now, it's a very simple story. Along Swan River was once a great forest. And so, one day, due to whatever reason, a fire starts in the forest, and the flame spreads and spreads and spreads. And the fire becomes stronger, cracking the earth itself, and this lets flood waters in, and Rottnest Island and the mainland are separated about 9,550 years to 1,245 years left. Or, years ago, sorry. So, as I said, we know the islands. Rottnest, obviously, I've just mentioned. But there are other flood myths, like the Tiwi people on the Tiwi Islands, that's Melbourne and Bathurst Island. It's another short story that essentially boils down to there's an old woman and she crawls across the land between these islands, and as she crawls, she is followed by a flood. Yes, anyway, the Tiwi Islands, Melbourne and Bathurst Islands, a woman falls between these islands, and the ground beneath her cracks, and the waters rise, and this separates Melbourne and Bathurst Islands. And this event actually happened about 8,200 to 9,650 years ago. And now, yes, obviously those two islands are still visible. But they aren't the only Australian myths. There's one where an angry god crashes waves and waves of the sea to prevent his wives from fleeing and to punish them for fleeing. They die. There's one where there's one myth from Australia where a bunch of users and elderly people both go to the inland, and the younger people, the younger generation, start getting competitive and judging, and so the demon just kills a couple of villains and that arc ends. And there are some Australian myths which involve islands that are no longer visible, that are sunk. Now, obviously, the myths that I've gone over could have been created any time between their sinking and modern day, but, there's a big but, a big as you may, it is not the only myth, and as I just mentioned, some have more credence to them. What was I? Sorry for dozing off there. Anyway, these are particularly fascinating because, well, there's a great deal of chance that they're not happened exactly, but they talk of real events and as such are, 8,000 years old, 12,000 years old, some of the oldest stories that persevere to this day, and there's a great reason for that, and that's Dreamtime, or the practices that are known as Dreamtime when translated to English, and that they're important because they create a chain of the storytellers through a lineage, because there's a great deal of importance in telling these stories. I won't be going over motifs because, I can go through them, but since there's a lot of myths, I'd just be ticking off blood myth. Obviously, as I said, the one I mentioned where an angry deity is killing his wife willingly, that feels a bit sort of a punishment, but ultimately there's a lot of them, I couldn't go through them, and the fact that they are real at all is incredible. So, well, Earth and Tequendama Falls, they both very prominently involve someone who doesn't study. What am I talking about? They both. What am I on about? I'm sleepy as heck. What was I even talking about? Whatever. Goodness, I'm sleeping. I am not going to be very coherent even for much longer. At this rate, I am ultra sleepy. I am eepy even. But so I'm just gonna talk shortly a bit more. Muse, that sort of. Muska and Ears both prominently, are less likely to be real, probably just old, because the places they mention, there's a lot less places that are real, but not that. There's a lot of places that were actually real. Like, we haven't found a place called Ease. We've found places that succumbed to the tide, but no, like, place as described in Ease, called Ease. And similarly, all the places in the story of Botchka I told, are both still around, so you can't say that these events happened because they don't. There's an effect, but there's not necessarily an effect that proves it. Which makes the Australian folk tales and stories about myths so fascinating in how much they persevered and how real they are. And just to finish off, I'm gonna go through a bunch of assorted flood myths that I remember off the top of my head. Now, obviously, not all cultures see floods as something bad. For example, Japanese culture says floods are a great thing, and as such, when a great dragon causes a flood, it's seen as a celebration. And speaking of dragons causing rain, the first monster snake that we found is from South Africa, or Southern Africa. And so a busman says that there is, as described in cave paintings, there was once a great serpent with horns, fangs, and legs, and the serpent, when cut, would release rain onto the sky, and so we have a similar thing there. Obviously, I've gone over the Aztec flood myth, or one of the Aztec flood myths. I'm sure there's more that I am not remembering off the top of my head. And of course, you have a couple floods in the Bible. One of blood and one of water with Noah. And so you can see flood myths are very common all over the place. And I could say that it's just a very popular myth. I could also say that there were a lot of floods in human history, a lot of them catastrophic. surely natural that some of them stuck around. And I think that's wonderful. And with that, I'm gonna rest. Because I am EP as heck, as mentioned, so thank you for listening. I'm gonna get some rest. See you next time. Miss Tara.